Welcome back to Market Makers on Promo Go TV. I'm your host, Rusty Pepper. On Market Makers, we explore the fascinating world of wine, beer, and spirit makers and the stories behind these amazing brands. Joining us today is Ian MacNeil, the founder of Glass Vodka. Welcome to the program, Ian.
Hey, Rusty, thank you so much. Good to talk to you.
Likewise. So, how are things? Obviously, you're there at your distillery in Seattle, and I know you all recently went from making vodka to hand sanitizer. So let's talk about that, since obviously that's what we're all living in right now.
Yeah, you're not kidding. It went from Monday, or at least last week, but Monday, offering up 1 and 2 ounce bottles to those who need a little extra hand sanitizer, to yesterday getting approval from the Department of Health and Human Services and the FDA, along with approval from the TTB, for all distilleries to be allowed to move into making sanitization products if so desired. And yesterday I had made the decision to kind of utilize a secondary branch that I have of my DSP license, and that is to make denatured spirits. I've never, let me say not never. I have rarely actually used that aspect of my business, but I do produce high proof alcohol for use for the a number of players in the perfume business. So my high proof ethyl alcohol that goes into Glass Vodka at 190 proof is also a beautiful base for perfume. And in the past, we've used those components of the distilled spirits process that I don't put into Glass Vodka, our flagship product. We've used it for cleaning purposes. I make all of my vodka from wine grapes from the Columbia Valley here in Washington State. So I have a lot of winery partners. And wineries, because the alcohol production starts from 0 and goes, up to maybe 14%, there's need to keep their environment very clean from bacteria, just like a brewery. In a distillery, our environment it's constantly being cleaned. My setup allows it to be very clean from the way we set up the distillery, but we're also pushing high proof alcohol around all the time. And so it's easier, I'll say, to keep it clean than a winery. So I give this byproduct to a lot of my winery partners as destroyed product. So it occurred to me that this same product that has a few things in it that you don't want to consume, but not so much that it makes it dangerous for your hands, makes a great hand sanitization product. The response was so immediate and so deep that I decided we don't need to be producing vodka right now. The country is in a national emergency, and there's a shortage of some really crazy needed supplies. Like the joke up here in the Northwest is the toilet paper. I know it's spread around the country, but it's not a stomach virus. I don't understand the toilet thing. I do understand the clean hands piece. And so, my gosh, we've got hospitals and police department here in Seattle, the ATF, nursing homes, citizens. I've never seen so many people around this distillery in the last 4 days as we have seen due to hand sanitizer. So I think we're doing the right thing. We're supplying people with something that's definitely needed.
You're absolutely. I think it's great to see that you and a lot of your peers around the country are doing the same thing for their regions. And I think that's what makes, the craft distilleries, the craft market in general, just fantastic, because it's really, you're part of the community.
Yeah.
And, you've got to give back to the people that have been supporting you all these years. And it's the best thing you can do, especially if you've got product that you can use that can help others.
Yeah. It's for the last 8.5 years, we've donated product to charity. We've done auction packages. My gosh, we've done auction packages in Dallas, where a couple celebrity chefs in Dallas come to Seattle. We do a 3 or 4 day package. They stay. We can visit tourist attractions. They come and cook in the distillery. And we help raise a lot of money that, while I would love to be able to write a $20 or $30,000 check, someone else can, so we can help support these different organizations. And man, we are a tiny distillery, but I think I've helped now over 900 different organizations over the last 9 years, 8.5 years, and raised over $1 million for all sorts of different causes. Things that you can't even imagine that there's a cause for. There's a cause for it. And now we sort of turn it on its ear. It's sort of tongue in cheek. I tell people, they say, oh, it must be so great to be a distiller. What a cool lifestyle. It's a lot of work. We're really sales reps for the IRS, but you get to be a craft distiller because you're part of your local community. But come on, you guys, we haven't been in the past in the business of saving the world. Now, all of a sudden, I feel like I'm doing my part to sort of help save the world. And instead of selling vices, I'm giving away sanitization, and maybe I'm making up for some of the other things I've done wrong. I don't know.
Hey, however you have to pay your way, that's all that matters. You're doing it. So
yeah, you got it. You got it.
So talk about, now you've got these really beautiful crystal bottles that you put your vodka in. I sure don't think you're going to be putting your hand sanitizer in those nice bottles, are you?
You know what? It's funny. There's not a lot of plastic spray bottles around, and I do have a little bottle supplier, so we're putting them in little Boston. It's a little Boston filler. It's like 1 and 2 ounce bottles, but they're colored glass, and we're just putting a simple sticker on it. But even when the people that are coming up, they go, "Oh my gosh, your bottle's so beautiful!" And then we give them the hand sanitizer bottle, and they think I've like gone out on a limb to do this. And really, I grabbed what was available. But it matches the brand.
Yeah. Hey, it's perfect. You may find you got a side hustle now. You're going to be doing,
Yeah.
Not only are you going to be selling this beautiful vodka, these bottles and everything, you're going to also have these really nice ass-kicking hand sanitizer bottles.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's like a gift with purchase.
Yeah, I've told everyone, just please bring them back, and I'll keep filling them for free because honestly, I can't get any more bottles. So I've got like another 3,000 bottles coming tomorrow, but we've already gone through more than 1,000 bottles, and now we've been filling up other containers. So it is what it is. So
yeah, I saw something. Chuck Butler down in Georgia. He put it he's a distiller down there that we've had on the show, and he sent a message out saying, "Hey, I need bottles. Anybody have a good bottle supplier?" I mean, it's like, what's hand sanitizer? Now we've got hand sanitizer being made, but we have nothing to put it in, so we need bottles. So
it's not like you can put it in a plastic baggie.
Yeah, wow. I think it's awesome what y'all are doing. So, but let's talk a little bit real quickly while we still have some time on the show. Let's talk about how you ended up getting into the spirits business to begin with.
I'll tell you, there were so many different little catalysts that I can't quite point to one, but I can point to the fact that my main reason was that I've always wanted to have my own business. My background had been sort of, I was in business development for telecommunications and software companies. It was my primary history. Now it's really not primary. I've been doing this for 10 years, so this is a good chunk of my business history. But in wanting to get into my own business, I looked at a bunch of different things. I thought, Rusty, what I wanted to do was buy someone else's headache. And the headache was so bad that I could go in and fix it because I've been involved in operations like that. And what I learned is several things about buying someone else's business. Don't tell them that their baby's too pretty, because then they think, why am I selling my baby? You got to just let them think their baby's ugly and that you're doing them a favor taking this thing away from them. But with a few changes that were happening here in the distribution business in Washington State 10 years ago, we had been one of the more controlled states in the controlled liquor state environment in Washington State. And in a year, we basically turned it on its ear. And in addition to changing the 3-tier distribution model to allowing producers to deal directly with the end supplier, we created licenses, just like Tito did in Texas 25 years ago, that allowed small producers to get into the business. And our first producers of spirits since Prohibition was only like 2009. And the first one in Seattle was 2010. I was the 23rd license awarded in the state. Now we're the second or third largest number of distilleries in the country, even greater than Texas. So I got into the market at a time when there was no expertise, and I decided to use wine grapes as my base. I have a lot of friends in the wine business here, from growers to winery, winery owners and producers. So it was my way to get into a business that I really love and I love to support here in Washington State without competing against my buddies who were already 20-year experts of that industry.
Yeah. So you mentioned y'all use grapes as the base. I've talked to others that use potatoes. So what's the difference between using a grape versus a potato?
You know, in the world of vodka, the most interesting thing about it is that you can really use anything. And when we do our little education classes, I try and first understand what people think you make wine grapes, or what you make vodka from. And it's interesting that most people think that aren't super knowledgeable about the base think that vodka's made from potatoes. And really, in the United States, the primary source of raw material is corn. And then it's wheat, and then you get into some rye, and there's a little bit of potatoes. And the way I like to describe it to people, the base material usually comes from the primary source of starch in the diet of whatever that community was. So potatoes really came from more of an Eastern European model. And then lots of fruits. Russia, where people think, oh, Russian vodka is all potato vodka. No, let me tell you, it's 99% wheat, because the Russians are pretty adept at growing wheat. Just as in Australia, it's mostly wheat. But what you'll find is those little pockets of places that have different sources. For example, making vodka from wine is pretty unique, or wine grapes. But it tends to be in areas where there's an overproduction or an overabundance of wine. So in Washington State, we're the second largest producer of wine in the country behind California. There's enough wine production that can be used for distilling. You find some in distilleries in Australia and in France, but it's just another source. Like, there's a couple out there now that are making it from milk sugar. Who knew? Lactose. And you can distill it into vodka. But, you know, your viewers know. You make vodka from any kind of base material. You just have to distill it to a neutral spirit, colorless, odorless, tasteless, to 190 proof. And then you water it back down. But honestly, the one thing that is a misnomer is that odorless is not necessarily true. I could pour you 10 national brands and you could smell, even with a novice detection of the aromas, you could smell the difference between vodkas if you're concentrating on it.
Gotcha. So I know part of y'all, you're offering too, is y'all have a lot of infused flavors within your vodka.
Yeah, that's right. So for me, Rusty, I am Washington's vodka-centric distillery. So I only make vodka. The flavors have come out of either desires or requests from others to have me do a special thing. So I will tell you, my first flavor is, I'm a coffee geek. So I made.
Oh, you're in Seattle.
Yeah, I'm in Seattle, and you know, I even roast my own coffee. I'm that much of a geek. So it made sense to me to want to combine something very Seattle, doing the coffee, and vodka together. And we do all of our infusions. As you've noticed, we do several infusions. We do one that's called Glass Kona. It's a coffee-infused vodka. We actually use Rio Kona coffee, but the brand is actually named after a piece of glass that I bought at an auction that I was very involved with up here. And nectar, it's infused with honey from local apiaries that we work with. And then glass spice. Nothing local about the spice infusion. It's actually a friend of mine from Dallas, Texas, whose brother owns one of the 5 plantations in Sri Lanka that can grow Ceylon cinnamon. So they cut and roll Ceylon cinnamon for us and ship it to us in Seattle, and we do a direct infusion with the cinnamon. And then we do one sort of ultra throwback to an old school Polish vodka called Starka, and it's barrel rested vodka. And so the TTB calls it a distilled specialty spirit, but it's vodka distilled from grapes, rested in charred oak barrels. That's what I have to have on my label. It's sort of like a Highland single malt whiskey to start, and then finishes like a vodka. It's caramely and vanilla, beautiful, rich notes to it, with a very clean finish.
And the colors of your vodka, they're spectacular. I was looking at, I mean, they're really, you get some amazing colors that you're getting out of these.
Yeah,
Well.
yeah. And they're all natural. I mean, the honey is because of the honey itself. Each of the vintages, I can call it vintages with the glass nectar, each batch of the honey that we get comes from a different type of honey. And so the pollen that the bees are bringing back to the hive stains the honey a different color. So our summer honey tends to be a little bit darker and richer in color than the spring honey. The coffee is because it's real coffee and the cinnamon. So we're not adding any colors or sweeteners or flavor enhancers or anything like that. It's just, that's what it looks like when it comes off, when it comes out of our stills, really. And then we do the infusion. So
They look fantastic. You've done a great job with that. I love the design. We all buy with our eyes a lot of times anyways, and it really is premium. One last question I've got before we let you go. I always like to ask everybody is what's one lesson learned, a piece of advice that you would offer to someone else who's either starting out or, considering getting into the spirits business?
Oh my God, there's so many. And I've had the opportunity to help other craft distillers and other people try and get into this business. As recently, Rusty, as last week, I had a guy come over here and I spent 3 hours with him and I basically convinced him not to get into it. He thanked me for straightening him out. I could give him a million lessons, and I'll tell you, put my contact information on this and tell anyone that wants to get into it, call me. I'll scare you to death. But what I'll tell you, here's one of the ones. Whatever you think you want to invest in the business, triple it. Don't double it, triple it. And then whatever you think you're going to do to sell your product and to get to that break-even point, and if you think that's 2 years, triple it. And if you have the stomach to invest way more money and time than you thought, and you're still in it to do it, and you're not in it to try and figure out how you're going to make your next million, but how you're going to spend your next 3, then get into it. Yeah. And that's why I'm in it. I got this little hiatus we're doing here for some public good, but it's a long road, but it's a fun business. It is definitely a lifestyle business, but you got to be in it with your heart.
Yeah. And so I lied. I've got actually one more question because as you're talking, I'm starting to think about more stuff. Is the name Glass? Where did that come from?
Oh my God, that's great. Yeah. There's a couple different things. So I'm also involved in the studio glass world up in Seattle. We're sort of the epicenter of all different types of glass art medium. And it used to be in Murano, Italy, off of Venice. But Seattle now has become this epicenter of glass artists that come from all over the world to train here. And because of my friendship with these guys, it's sort of my nod to saying, hey, vodka making is really sort of a liquid art form. And oddly enough, so is glass making, because you're taking a solid and you're heating it to the point of a liquid, and then you've got to mold it back into a solid. So it's sort of my nod without sounding like diamond or sapphire or whatever. Fine. It's clean and pure. And if you know the backstory, it's because of my love of glass. But I also think it doesn't sound too corny either.
No, it's I had a suspicion that may have been it just because of some of the very well-known glass makers in Seattle.
Yeah, there's a few of them.
Yeah, it's great. You've done a great job with the product, the brand. Awesome job giving back to the community, especially at this time of need that everybody's dealing with. It's crazy. I think we need more people like you out there in the world doing their part. So again, appreciate all your insight and sharing more about Glass Vodka. And if you'd like to learn more about Ian and Glass Vodka, please visit us at promogocrm.com and check out our blog. On behalf of all of us at Promogo, thank you for joining us today on Market Makers. And if you would like to be a guest on a future show of Market Makers, please reach out to us because we would love to hear your story and be able to feature you on one of our future shows. Until then, I'm Rusty Pepper, VP of Sales at Promogo. Thank you for watching.
Rusty, thank you so much for your time.